God will let life break us down, eventually, until we're faced with an inadequacy that only He can fill. His intended holiness isn't a limitation, but a life of extreme liberty where we're no longer controlled by the darkness or the desperation of inadequacy. It's a completed life of wholeness, value, and honor.
Thanks for joining us on Life Journeys, a podcast about thriving through the worst pain that life brings. With global initiatives threatening big changes to our way of life, we're going to need to activate Jesus' words about mountain-moving faith. Words That Work is the ongoing series on Life Journeys that is rooted in releasing revelational words of faith that will work every time and with everyone. It's about moving the mountains that keep us from the presence and goodness of God. It's about defining our life purpose and identity through encountering Him until we have the power to move the obstacles that are destroying our liberty and hope.
I'm talking today about until the idols of our defeat are vanquished. There are so many times in life where, to the casual observer, it doesn't look like we're in the will of God. We may wonder what's happening. Ancient Israel's experience was like that when they were first saved from Egyptian bondage. Why is my life so hard? Why am I getting so impatient? Well, I've got some awesome news for you. If you're born again, according to God's estimation and plan, you're a very special person. The things that are going on in your life may seem negative, but there's a very positive purpose behind the challenges. If you know what God's up to and can learn to cooperate with Him, everything in your life is going to start to look different. What God was up to with Israel, who was our example today, was that He was setting them apart as a special people for Himself, according to the Word. Exodus said that He had delivered them for a purpose. It was expressly for the reason that He wanted to be near them so He could dwell with them. The Bible wraps it up in holiness. And I believe it's time that you and I got a fresh vision and revelation of how amazing that really is. For holiness is your power to have peace, strength, and understanding how to let God finish the job. He's setting you apart as a light in the darkness around you. Holiness is the best definition of wholeness. It's the bedrock in which God's glory can reside. Deuteronomy said, "For you are a holy people unto the Lord your God. The Lord your God has chosen you to be a special people to Himself, above all people that are upon the face of the earth." Now realize, as a born-again Christian, you are grafted into Israel. You have the same covenant promises and calling through Christ. Holiness is an incredible place of divine identity, self-esteem's heavenly answer for an insufficient heart. Holiness defines what I've been created to have, to be, and to identify in. It's what my renewed heart longs for. Holiness is the atmosphere and inner countenance of a perfect and complete man. It's living in the intended nature we've been gifted and been created to experience as our identity. Deep inside, we want to be perfect, and holiness is the expression of that perfection and value. Holiness is not a negative thing that's contrary to our deepest needs. But too often, we've looked at holiness as something that's stuffy, starchy, and antagonizing to our well-being and freedom. Holiness is not a limitation, but rather it is a life of extreme liberty, where we are no longer controlled by the darkness of this world or the desperation of inadequacy. This is the beauty of holiness that the Scriptures speak about. And don't forget about the promises of victory over their enemies for ancient Israel when they walked in holiness. It was their true power with God, and for us, It's a great expression and release of faith. I sense God telling me that the walk in holiness is the principal element of success in life as a whole person. Furthermore, without holiness, a person will never resolve his self-esteem issues. Now, it's important to recognize the process of building our faith and character that we might learn to embrace our special heritage. We are far more than ordinary flesh and blood beings who will struggle in life and merely die someday. When Israel came out of their bondage in Egypt, which was a biblical example of sin's bondage, they began to meet some very daunting trials. It didn't look like the will of God, but it was. It's similar to Jesus being led into this same wilderness to be tempted. It didn't look like the will of God. It didn't feel like it or sound like it, but it was. Through it, you see, God changes untested innocence into tested virtue. He works to create on the outside what's true on the inside. Israel faced the Red Sea, then the bitter, poisonous water in the desert. They were tested with hunger and thirst and enemy armies, and then, of course, the time Moses left them for 40 days when he went alone up into the mountain to receive the 10 Commandments. Israel again failed as they built the golden calf. You know, it's your thirst for finances as your bottom line in the decisions you make. How many people look at living for God when He asks something of them, but their first question is, can I afford to do this? Being a people set apart for God is going to cost something. It's going to require unflinching faithfulness to God, no matter what. And it's going to be built upon proving that out by faith when the world is crushing you as it closes in on everything you've trusted in the past. What's God doing? He's trying to make you that special person of amazing wholeness and holiness by learning to trust Him when it gets hot. It's the waiting and wondering when your Moses, so to speak, is gone and doesn't look like he's coming back and you feel abandoned by God. Then it's waiting at the shore of the Jordan River, and you see no way to get across that major obstacle that bars your way to your intended destiny, purpose, and true identity, and so you try to invent an identity of your own. But God is about to part the river. Then, when you get to the other side and Jericho is your next conquest, God again seems to switch things up. Wait, He says. You need a circumcised heart, one with diminishing carnality in it. Trust me, He says. Don't despise the times of waiting and testing. Don't make golden calves. Then the captain of the Lord's army, of which you're a part, shows up on the horizon in the setting sun as you contemplate how to overcome this obstacle in your way. You're challenged. You're afraid. And your character is still way too carnal, and you know it. You finally admit it. God, you say, are you for me or against me here? He says, take off your shoes, for you're standing on holy ground. Making a long story short, that holy ground is the ground in front of you that has blocked your way for years. But it's your future, the next step you're going to take. Your frustration or impatience or anger and selfishness and unbelief, He says, that's all dedicated to me. Stay steady. It's holy ground. Your life is holy ground, and we're going to bring you to the place of finally conquering it. I've accepted you, and I'm going to take care of everything. I'm not here to give you that money you wanted, that ministry you thought you should have, or that new house. I'm not here for your adversary. I'm not here for your carnal life. The ground you are on from this point forward is holy ground, and you're going to walk into your destiny. This is your holiness. It's a spiritual state of being, through the impartation of the Holy Spirit and the efficacy of redemption. Holiness is more a work of God in me than it's a work of my own. Be holy because I'm holy, he said. He makes me holy because he is, and I am in him and he is in me. It's a powerful work of grace and mercy, and I've been made a child of God. I will be presented before him, holy and blameless, by Christ alone. I may now say, by faith, my life is hallowed by heaven and on the earth. It is a divine vision of eternal identity. It's the Spirit of God in me saying, you are hallowed to me and to the earth. He who touches you now touches me. He whom you touch also is touched by me. Every place where you set your foot is holy. You reverence it, and I will back you up. Don't worry about what the other people are saying or believing, or if they reject you. They will be treated in heaven and earth like one who has encountered a man of God. Your power and your place is only as one who walks with reverence and fear and holiness by faith. So don't play with the world, and devils won't play with you. Whatever you bind and loose on earth will be bound and loosed in heaven. It's the gift of revelation. Don't explain your gift, just use it. Your power is not in the telling, but in the living. Now let me tell you something. When you don't have doubt in your heart about your actions, you won't have doubt in your heart about God's intentions. Have the attitude of being clean. Leviticus 10:10 tells the priest to put a difference between what is clean and what is unclean. At the first, they didn't, and death was the result. Therefore, have an attitude that exudes cleanness, for it will work life in you and those around you. But death works in the atmosphere of the unclean. The obedience of faith works life in the atmosphere of death. So, holiness is the best definition of wholeness. It's the ultimate resolution of the issues of self-esteem and rest and liberty. Now, there have been many times where I seem to have taken a step forward in my Christian growth, only to fall back after a day or even less. But deep and everlasting change into the character of Christ and into a life of holiness is something that we must work at, and for a good length of time. Remember, it takes a lifetime to grow an oak tree, but only overnight to grow a weed. Too often we get a revelation, or we have an encounter with God, and the change it brings will last for a day or so. But this is a lifetime of growth where we need to have patience with ourselves, for God's patient with us. God will let life bring everyone down, eventually, until they're faced with an inadequacy that only God can fill. Whether you know it or not, your soul is searching for holiness to complete you, settle you, and empower you for life. Holiness is not against you. It is your destined perfection and completeness, and it's only found in Christ through faith.
You can unlock the presence of God in your life. There are revelation principles that remove the mountains, keeping us from joy, hope, peace, and purpose when our world gets turned upside down. Look for these words that work with Pastor Hardika as he shares what has helped him when life got hard. And don't forget to check out his book, The Fortress and the Firebrand, available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Thanks for listening to Life Journeys.
God will let life break us down, eventually, until we're faced with an inadequacy that only He can fill. His intended holiness isn't a limitation, but a life of extreme liberty where we're no longer controlled by the darkness or the desperation of inadequacy. It's a completed life of wholeness, value, and honor.